Hey folks, today we're going to take a look at a game that is currently seeking funding on Kickstarter. That project is called Maid Saga, The Story of Faltisia, and it's from Lion Wing Publishing. Now, if you like what you see throughout the rest of this preview video, I'm going to encourage you to go to the official Kickstarter project page to find out more information than I could possibly tell you here. To do that, all you got to do is follow the link in the top corner of your screen, as well as down in the description section underneath this video. Go there, find out more information, and hopefully just consider backing the project. Now, Maid Saga, The Story of Faltisia is a competitive game where you and the other players are actually these prospective maid knights in this legendary land of Faltisia. Maid knights are like these incredibly well-respected and powerful warriors who protect their city, and you are going into an academy in order to try and learn and train to become one of those maid knights. And of course, because it is a competitive game, you're trying to be better and even more powerful than your peers and more skilled at being both a maid and a knight. Of course, it's all easier said than done. You're going to have to be using, you have to be training your mind, body, and soul. You're going to have to be gaining special items and using all the resources you have at your disposal. It is a school, so you're going to have off-campus activities that you have to add to your curriculum, as well as attending lectures and such and things. And of course, exams, because it is a school. But before we go any further, let me give you a brief look at how the game is played with a prototype copy of the game. So just do bear in mind that what you see here in this version of the game that I have may change in the final version, and that is why it is so important for you to go to the Kickstarter page to see the plans that they have for the game in its final release. But in any event, once we're done with that, we will come back and discuss it further. Maid Saga, The Story of Faltisia is a competitive card drafting and resource management game for 3 to 6 players. Each player is a new student at the prestigious Royal Faltisia Academy, which you joined in order to graduate and become one of the legendary Maid Knights. You'll have to attend lectures, train yourself in each of the 4 attributes required of Maid Knights, and still give yourself time for off-campus activities to round out your curriculum. In game terms, you will be using action cards, resources, and your own special maid ability in order to gain maid points, or MP, an indication both of your ability to become a knight and your superiority over your peers. After 3 full rounds, school years, have passed, the player with the most MP will be the winner of the game and the most acclaimed graduate of the academy. To set up the game, first give each player a student registration board. Either randomly or by choice, each player takes a character and its matching maid ability card. Place that maid ability card in the portrait space of the board, then place the character card on top, base white side up. During the course of the game, you may be able to gain a provisional maid's license, which will let you flip your character card to its maid side, which will be worth MP at the end of the game and enable you to take and use your maid ability action card. Shuffle the graduation requirement cards and deal 3 to each player, who will then choose 2 to keep face down in an area you'll call your notebook, where most cards you play or acquire will go. The third card and the rest of the deck is removed from the game. Graduation cards each have a special requirement you must try and meet by the end of the game, like having 1 or more of your attributes at a certain level, or having certain cards in your possession, having a provisional maid's license, etc. If you do meet these requirements at the end of the game, you'll gain MP during that final scoring, but if you don't, you'll lose MP. Each player will then be given a different colored cube for each corresponding attribute on their board: strength, intelligence, beauty, and purity. And can freely choose their starting score in each, though the scores must add up to a total of 8, and no score can start off beyond 5. Each player takes 3 sterlings, which is the official coinage of Faltisia, and 1 attribute token of each of the 4 colors. The rest of the tokens are placed in a stock within reach of all players. There are also rainbow tokens, which are wild and can be used in place of any of the primary colors. Sterling tokens worth 5, MP tokens in 1s and 5s, and ×5 multipliers just in case you run out of any other token. Near that, shuffle each of the decks of cards and leave them within reach of all players. You may have to remove any cards in these decks marked with 5+ in the bottom corner, as these cards are only used in the 5 or 6 player games. Action cards are divided into 3 separate decks, marked 1, 2, and 3, for each of the rounds of the game. These cards have a variety of effects when played. Some of them give you attribute tokens when played during lectures, MP immediately or at the end of the game if you meet their requirements, or just an immediate attribute token or sterling with no requirements. The green extracurricular cards require you to gain as many as you can of each type by the end of the game to gain MP and not lose MP. Many of these cards have a cost on the top that must be paid in either attribute tokens or sterlings. Place the item card deck nearby as well. Players will be able to purchase these during the game for sterlings, and they can have powerful effects. Some are instant use when purchased and may give you resources or free actions, while others have an ongoing effect that is used whenever the player takes certain actions. Still others are worth MP at the end of the game or can affect the MP you gain in other ways. Next is the class schedule board, a communal board that all players will have to refer to. Place the time marker on the round 1 registration space. Then you'll need to set up the attribute tokens for the lecture phases, which I'll talk more about in a moment. But for now, for round 1, take 2 tokens of each color and randomly place 1 in each of the top spaces. There will be 1 left over. Take 1 more attribute token of each color, add it to the leftover token from before, and randomly place them in the top spaces of round 2, skipping the X's, and this time with no leftovers. Lastly, randomly place 1 attribute token of each color in the top spaces of round 3, skipping X's and returning the leftover to the supply. With this, you can now finally begin the game. Every round of Maid Night is broken out into 3 parts: the registration phase, the 7 terms, and the exams phase. The registration phase itself has 2 parts. First, restock the Academy store. Depending on the number of players, 2 to 5 item cards are flipped up next to the deck. In later rounds, even if there are cards remaining from previously, you'll still add the same amount of cards. The second part of registration is drafting action cards. Take the deck for corresponding round and deal 7 cards to each player. Each player chooses 1 card, places it face down in front of them, and when everyone has done this, passes the remaining 6 cards to the player on their left in the first and third round, and the player to their right in the second round. When this is performed a total of 7 times, each player will now have their hand of 7 cards for the round. In the second and third rounds, it is possible for players to have 1 card left over from the previous round. This card is set aside until the draft is over and then added to your hand as an 8th card. The main part of each round is the 7 terms. Each term is broken down into a lecture phase and an action phase, in that order, though any X space indicates that there won't be a lecture for that term and you'll go right to the action phase. Move the time marker over to the current lecture space. Then, simultaneously, all players decide whether to attend the lecture or not. Any players that choose yes will move up the attribute on their board that corresponds to the token in that lecture space. Any players who skip the lecture instead may perform 1 off-campus action. There are 4 off-campus actions, and there are reminders on your registration board about what they are. Studying lets you take 1 rainbow token from the supply, and if you have your license, you may also take 1 standard token of any color. Part-time job nets you 3 sterlings, or 5 if you have your license. Shopping lets you spend sterlings to the supply to acquire a face-up item card. And lastly, Maid Training lets you spend 3 attribute tokens of the same color to move the corresponding attribute up 1 space. You can do this multiple times with the same action if you have enough tokens. If, after doing this, you either have at least 1 attribute at rank 12 or all attributes at rank 7, you can then apply for your provisional Maid license as part of that same action. Flip your character card over and take your Maid ability card into your hand as another action card, though it is significantly more powerful than most of the action cards. Once the lecture phase is resolved for all players, move the time marker down to the action phase space. Each player places 1 card from their hand face down into their notebook. Then, simultaneously, all players either flip the card face up or keep it face down. If the player can't afford the cost of the action card, they have no choice and must keep the card face down. Every player who kept a card face down will then perform an off-campus action of their choice in order of lowest to highest of the card's numbers in the bottom corner without revealing those cards. Those cards stay face down in your notebook until the end of the game. Then, every player who chose to play an action card face up will resolve their card's effects, pay the cost of the card as well, also in order of lowest to highest card numbers. The cards stay face up in your notebook until the end of the game. After this, move the time marker to the next lecture phase and continue on until all 7 terms have been resolved. Then, each round ends with exams. Every player compares their attribute scores, and whoever has the highest score in each attribute will get 1 or 2 MP, depending on the round. Then, add up the total of all of your attribute scores. Whoever has the highest total gains 1, 3, or 6 sterlings, depending on the round. In both cases, ties result in each player getting the full amount of sterlings or MP. After the first and second round exams, move the time marker down to the lecture phase of the first term of the next round. But after the third round exams, the game ends and final scoring must take place. There are multiple ways points are scored, based on your notebook. Flip up your graduation cards and see if you meet the requirements and gain MP, or don't meet them and lose MP. Gain the MP indicated in the top corner of any blue, brown, red, or yellow action cards face up in your notebook, as well as face up item cards. Figure out how many green cards you have of each letter A, B, and C, and either gain MP or lose MP accordingly. If you meet the requirements, score the MP for face-up purple cards as well. And if you manage to get your provisional license and flipped over your character card, you gain those indicated MP too. Look at your registration board. If any of your attributes are high enough, you'll gain 1, 2, 5, or 10 MP for each one. Lastly, look at your tokens. Each MP token is worth its face value, and every 3 sterlings you have left is worth 1 MP. Add all of this up, and whoever has the most MP is the winner of the game, with ties going to the player with the highest combined attribute scores. Before we move on, I would be remiss if I didn't mention the Battle for London expansion that comes packed in with the complete edition of the game. London has been overtaken by dark forces, and experienced Maid Knights now need your help to keep the peace. This expansion introduces brand new ways to score MP by aiding the citizens of the city and using the support of legendary paladins. You'll even have a chance to take back Big Ben. The complete edition also includes extensive rules for playing the game solo for when you can't get 3 or more people together. You'll be playing alone against another game-controlled student who follows specific preset rules. But, however you choose to play, that is Maid Knight, the story of Faltisia. Well, I think what's most interesting about Maid Knight Saga is the fact that you have all these different moving parts in the game. You have, card drafting, and you have resource management, and you're trying to acquire cards, and you're trying to move up on these different tracks representing your attributes and make use of all these different types of actions. And there's very clearly delineated phases and things that you go from one phase to another, and you're doing them over, and you're drafting over, and all of these different things. I guess you would call them Eurogame elements. You need to look at them individually. You have all of these different things in place, but because of the way that they all integrate together with the components and the artwork and everything and the story of the game, it actually does blend together into the theme, and it makes sense together with the theme. It really does seem like you are in a school, and you're going to different lectures, and you're doing different off-campus activities, and you're training yourself and getting better as you go along, both in thematic terms and in IRL terms as how you progress through the game. As you get your attributes increase, and you have the potential of getting your provisional maze license, which is another thematic element of the game, you get more powerful, you become more prestigious. Just doing that, just getting your maze license, gives you maid points for the end of the game, but it also gives you a very powerful ability to use, so you feel like you're getting stronger. Then you also feel you're getting maybe not stronger is not the word, but maybe more clout in the school as you're doing more things, which is represented by playing more action cards, having those face down. There's some set collection elements here too, which is sort of representative of you going out into the city and seeing more things and gaining more experience about the city that you'll be protecting as a Maid Knight. And you're interacting with the other players in such a way that you're trying to look at what they're doing and how they're improving themselves at the school, and trying to block that as best you can, but still having to worry about yourself. This is again all sort of tied into the theme of you're working for yourself and trying to improve your own schoolwork, but you are always in competition with your peers. So there's all these different things to keep in mind, and it does feel like there are a lot of different moving parts in the game, and I guess that there is. But in reality, if you kind of just focus in on what the game is, you're just moving between a few different simple phases and going from one to the other. So even though there's a lot of decision making to be had, because there's a lot of different action cards and a lot of different item cards, and the graduation cards that you have to worry about, there's like this ever ticking clock for you, like, am I going to meet the requirements or not? Do I have enough time? There's all these different things, but it's still just those simple phases going from one to another, so it doesn't ever feel like too overwhelming. And because of that, it can be easy to explain the game to people as well. It doesn't feel like you're getting overwhelmed. You're like, yes, look at all the cards, look at all the chips and the things there. But very simply, you go to a lecture, then you take your action, and thematically it works out. You're going to your part-time job, or you're studying, or you're doing all of these different things. So it all sort of makes sense and doesn't become too overwhelming for people who may not be experienced with this kind of game, but wants to play the game because they like the theme. So this would be the kind of the game that would potentially appeal to those kind of people. But of course, because there are all these different tokens, all these different cards, and all these different types of actions you can take in moving, cubes up and down on tracks, it's definitely going to appeal to those kinds of players who love that crunchiness too. But again, that is entirely up to the people in your playgroup. And if you think that the people in your group, or you yourself, because remember, there is a solo mode as well, there's even expansion content too, which I couldn't touch on too much during the preview, and that adds a whole other layer of sort of crunchiness and combativeness as well to the game. If you or the other players in your group, you feel like are going to like this type of thing, then listen, you don't have to take my word for it. You can go to the official Kickstarter project page and find out more information than I could have possibly told you in this brief video. Do that by following the link in the top corner of your screen, as well as down in the description section underneath this video. That is Maid Saga, the story of Faltisia, from Lion Wing Publishing. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, for supporting our sponsors. Take care.